Talk to 200-200. You'll get a text confirming entry plus iHeartRadio info. Standard data and message rates apply in this nationwide contest. That's Talk to 200-200. This is the Ross Kaminsky Show. Now, Ross Kaminsky on Denver's talk station, 630 KHOW.
I think I surprise some people from time to time, people who know me well as a not very religious Jew, who is not a social issues conservative. When I come out in writing and on the airways and stand up as strongly as I stand up for anything else in this world, for people like Jack Phillips of Masterpiece Cake Shop to not be forced to violate his religious views, even though I don't share them, because if we don't stand up for them, one day they're going to come for me. And I want to have this conversation with someone who's been thinking about this a lot, someone you know well, David Horowitz. David Horowitz has a new book, Dark Agenda, The War to Destroy Christian America. Why am I stumbling? And David, first of all, good morning, and thank you for being here. And in a certain way, I do think there is something not just appropriate, but especially American about having two not very religious Jews wanting to stand up against this war against Christianity.
Absolutely, and it's a gift from the Protestant creators of this country. America is a Christian country, and we have a secular government also because of the Protestants. With the before the Protestant Reformation, and 98% of our country was settled by Protestants, and our country and its values and its freedoms were created by Protestants, and actually couldn't have been created by any other group. Before the Protestant Reformation, you could only get to heaven by going through the Catholic Church, because it was an established church. It was the true church. It, descended from Peter, and its priesthood. And if you got, if you didn't live quite the best life and were in purgatory, you could buy indulgences and get into heaven that way. Mm-hmm. What the Protestants saw, and what America is based on, is that churches and governments are human institutions, and therefore they're going to be corrupted by human beings. We've had a lesson in the last 2 years in corruption at the top of our society. Our country is built on a distrust of authority. Just because the people in authority are the same people who caused the problems in the first place, except they have more power. These are all Protestant ideas, and they had a name for it. They called it the priesthood of all believers. And what that meant was there was no intermediary between a human being and his or her creator. Not a priest, not a government. It's a one-on-one. And as you can immediately tell, if there's a priesthood of all believers, everybody's equal. That's where we get our ideas of equality. So you can't really separate. Jack Phillips is a hero, but his battle can't be separated from the battle of all of us for our freedom. If you don't have freedom of conscience and you can't speak out and express your views, you can't defend any of your freedoms. So this is really an existential battle, because the Democratic Party has gone over to the totalitarian side. They're anti-American. They're anti-democratic. They want a one-party state. Look what they've done. They've set out to destroy, the First Amendment. That's what this Chick-fil-A, for example,
right,
caper is about. That Chick-fil-A has been banned from 2 airports in Texas and New York. And why? Because its charitable arm funds a 501c3 nonprofit which promotes its ideas. It's to suppress ideas that these leftists don't like.
One thing you just said there really struck me, and I want to reemphasize it because I think it is such a great point, and it's not often phrased the way you put it. And that is, for people like you and me, I'll just speak for me. I obviously don't speak for you. I think you and I are fairly similar.
I'm a secular Jew. I'm an agnostic.
Yeah. Okay. So for people like you and me, this thing about Jack Phillips and people like that, it's not that you and I love religion or a particular religion, or we're trying to force God into people's lives or anything like that. You put your finger on it just a second ago when this is really about totalitarianism. It's not actually about religion.
Right. I realized when I came out of the left, I thought about it. You can't have an inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness unless there's a God. Because otherwise, government gives you the right, and government can take it away. And if you're an agnostic, the way I am, and don't know if there's a God, you have to have at least a respect for the belief in God and a respect for people who believe in God. Mm-hmm. You have to understand that your rights are a gift from that point of view.
That's right.
When I say that, we happen to be in a state which is going down the tubes. What is the matter with the Democrats in this state? They want to abolish the Electoral College, which Elizabeth Warren also wants to do. They don't understand what our freedoms are based on. The Electoral College is there to protect the minority from the tyranny of the majority. Actually, America's an amazing system. The founders put sovereignty in the hands of the people, and then they tied their hands with checks and balances because they knew that the root cause of all social problems is us. It's not society like leftists.
That's absolutely right.
We create society. We're the problem, and therefore the Electoral College is vital. But, of course, they want to destroy the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment. They want illegals to vote. They want felons to vote. They want children to vote. They want it when you go to the ballot box, you don't have to show an ID, so you can vote 100 times if you're voting for them.
And they want to pack the Supreme Court so that every time those things are challenged, they win. I want to come back to your book, David. Also, as I'm reading through Dark Agenda, and those of you just joining us, my very special guest, David Horowitz, and his new book is Dark Agenda: The War to Destroy Christian America. You spend some time talking about some of the more famous atheists, and in where you're talking about Hitchens, you make a statement that also really kind of made me pause and think a little bit. You say, the argument about the existence of God and the debate over whether America is a Christian nation or a secular republic clouds the issue rather than clarifying it because, you say, both claims are correct. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. The reason we're a secular nation is because of that Protestant view that churches and religions are man-made, and therefore they're vulnerable to all the corruptions of individuals. Therefore, they didn't want to have. First of all, you can't define what it means to be a Christian. I mean, Thomas Jefferson was a Christian, but he didn't believe in the divinity of Jesus. There's no orthodoxy. That's the key. There's no identity politics orthodoxy like the Democratic Party is now a prisoner of in the American founding, and that's because of the Protestants. So they created a secular nation. They didn't have religious language. You don't find it in the Constitution because they were protecting everybody. They were protecting everybody's right to disagree and dissent. And, the striking characteristic about Democrats today is they hate it when you disagree with them.
Yeah.
And they will pour vitriol on you and defame you and character assassinate you if you disagree with them. We have this now and this attack on Barr. I mean, they've already demonized this this guy for nothing. I mean, he's right. Of course they were spying on the Obama had the intelligence agencies. I mean, it's the most shocking thing in my lifetime that a president of the United States would get the U.S. intelligence agencies, which are supposed to protect us from foreign enemies, to spy on a rival campaign and effort to destroy it.
So I want to go back to this concept. You will often hear some Christians say we're a Christian nation or a Judeo-Christian nation, and as you point out, that's at least partly true. And then other people say no, we're a secular nation because look at the quote-unquote separation of church and state, and so therefore we're not a Christian nation. And again, I think your intellectual point that it's both is good.
We're a secular nation because of the Christians. It was a Christian idea to make this a secular nation, a Protestant idea. People have to understand that. And then when you look at my book documents these horrific Supreme Court decisions, criminal decisions by the Supreme Court, the banned prayer in the public schools. A prayer does not establish a religion, but the idea is to drive all religious consciousness out of the public square so that you can't teach children that the Pilgrims were Christians. You can't mention that. Or that they gave thanksgiving to God. You can say the Hopi Indians pray to Mother Earth, but you can't say that Christians pray to Jesus. It's disgusting what they've done. And if you wonder about it, just think for a moment of what the Supreme Court is. It's 9 lawyers, not unelected, appointed for life by politicians. Now, how could that go wrong? And what created the religious right in this country is Roe v. Wade, the worst Supreme Court decision ever made. Completely invented, based on a non-existent right to privacy that Planned Parenthood lawyers invented out of whole cloth. As Rehnquist said, there's nothing private about an abortion. There's a mother, a doctor, and the unspoken, an unborn child. This is not a private affair, and it's not like having your appendix out. Right.
I think, in a way, that it's a little bit like the Jack Phillips thing in the sense that, I'm not Christian and I'm not against gay marriage, but I believe he has the right to stand up for that. The same thing. I'm
to his views.
Right, and I'm also pro-choice, but I think that Roe v. Wade was a terrible Supreme Court decision in which they tortured the Constitution to get to an outcome they wanted. And if I support that, when they torture the Constitution and get to an outcome that I really don't like, how am I going to have any moral authority to complain about it?
Well, if you look, women, it has really nothing to do, Roe v. Wade, with choice. Women make a lot of choices. If they're not raped, where they don't, of course, have a choice, then they choose to have sex. They choose the person with whom to have sex. They choose whether to have unprotected sex or not. And if there was an accident, they choose not to take the morning after pill. And only then do they have this choice, and it's still a choice of whether you can't afford the child or it's inconvenient or whatever it is. You can give birth to it and then find it a loving home. The choice to kill it, this is a choice, that we want to enshrine as a fundamental law of the land.
So, David, we've got about 2 minutes left. My special guest, David Horowitz, his new book.
I want to go into this bigot.
Yeah.
I do not want conservatives to call Democrats liberals. They're vindictive bigots. And this idiot Buttigieg from the mayor of South Bend, the city which is a mess under his rule anyway, his attack on Mike Pence, Vice President Pence, is unconscionable. when Buttigieg came out as gay publicly, Trump praised him. Pence went out of his way to say what a great mayor he was, and all the things politicians say about each other.
Mm-hmm.
And he is portraying Pence as the bigot. He's the bigot, and his defense is ridiculous. They're so smug and arrogant. Your argument is not with me, it's with my creator. Well, Ted Bundy could say the same thing. This isn't theology. This guy doesn't understand the complexity of theological arguments. God created everything. It's the oldest conundrum in theology. If God is good, how did all this evil get in the world?
And I really liked, and I'm sure you've seen this, Mike Pence's response to that, and also his wife Karen's response. They said, we believe what we believe. We believe in the traditional view of marriage, but that does not mean we dislike or despise or anything like that people who have a different view. And so now we see who the totalitarians really are.
I know, Russ, but, they said that over and over and over again. And the other side is deaf.
Yeah.
Christians, they basically turn the other cheek here. I want to see some aggressive Republicans smash these people. This guy Buttigieg is a menace. They all are. Cory Booker talking about we have to get rid of the bigotries in the Constitution. What an ignoramus. The Constitution doesn't mention race, doesn't use the words black or white. And slavery isn't the original sin of this country. Americans can take great pride in the fact that slavery existed for 3,000 years prior to our Declaration of Independence, which declared everyone has an inalienable right to liberty and is equal. And within a generation, we ended slavery at the cost of 350,000 mainly white lives.
And David,
that's proud of what they did with slavery.
Indeed, and I do have to leave it there, but I would love to have you back on. We'll continue the conversation. David Horowitz, his new book, Dark Agenda: The War to Destroy Christian America. Thanks so much for being here, David.
Thank you.
Sponsored by Hampton by Hilton.
But conditions for the morning drive. Side roads are going to be snow-packed and icy. Drivers are sliding right through intersections. Be careful. It's icy on the merge ramp.